Natalia Bonner. Welcome to Let's Stitch a Year of Stars Piecing Edition. This is block number 11, Bryan's star. I've been having so much fun sharing these piecing blocks over this past year. If you haven't checked out all the previous ones, over the course of this whole entire year, I've been sharing on the 15th of each month, step-by-step directions, teaching you how to piece these awesome blocks that are right here behind me. Now, what are these blocks and why am I sharing them with you? Well, you guys know I love machine quilting. That's really my passion and piecing is really my hobby. So I created a fun stitch along called Let's Stitch a Year of Stars, where the first of every month I'm sharing with you how to machine quilt the blocks that we're sharing the piecing for today. So make sure you do come back on the 1st of next month and I will share with you how I'm going to machine quilt this block. All right, so today we are going to piece Bryan's star. Now you can check out this step-by-step cutting directions in the companion workbook. In the companion workbook, we're using 2 colors of blue and a light pink as the background filler. For this version today, I'm switching up my colors just a little bit. I'm going to still be using pink for my background fabric, but instead of using the 2 blues, I am going to be using this gold color for my inside star and then this green color for my outside star. Just mixing it up a little bit. This version that I've been piecing is very bright and it's going to be such a fun quilt once it's all done. So once you have all of your cutting complete and a few of the markings, there's a few places where you're going to mark some angular lines, then you're ready to start stitching. We're going to start stitching making several flying geese units. Now, before we do stitch though, I'm going to be piecing on my fun little featherweight machine. I always get a lot of questions about this machine, so we have posted all the details about it in the description below. All right, friends, let's get sewing. So I'm going to start out using my 2.5 inch by 4.5 inch gold strips. We're going to sew on the angular line that we've marked on the back of those pink squares, point to point right along that line. As I piece, I am going to chain piece, and because I'm doing a few sets of these, I'm going to chain piece both colors at once. They'll all have the pink background, so it'll make it just a little bit quicker as far as piecing goes. Now you are going to notice on a couple of these squares, there is a little bit of piecing that's already there. I actually messed up when I was cutting, and because I'm piecing this block from 3 fat quarters, I had to do a little bit of craftiness or do a little bit of extra piecing. So that's why there are a few pieces, just fixing my own mistakes. All right, let's get sewing. So when I finish this block and all of these Year of Stars blocks, they need to finish at 12 inches. So from 4 of each of these, my green and my gold, which would be 2 different blues, I have sewn this 2.5 inch square. So I'm going to have a total of 8 flying geese units. Once I've pieced those, then I'm going to clip them apart because I have chain pieced, and then we'll trim 1/4 of an inch on the outside of my stitch line. Now we'll press. As I press, because I am working now on the bias, I like to use just a little bit of flatter, mist it on there, set my seam, and then press. On each of these, because I am using 2 fabrics, solid colors that are pretty similar, they're Kona cottons, I am just going to press everything out on these Flying Geese units. Once I have all of those Flying Geese units pressed, now we're going to take them back to the machine, grab the remaining pink 2.5 inch squares, and we're going to sew those onto the opposite sides of those Flying Geese units. And of course, I am going to chain piece these. Now you can see here, this little 2.5 inch square that I did have to piece, I'm placing it so that the majority of that piecing section is up here on the top side that I'm going to cut off. So it'll only be a tiny section that you even notice that little mistake. All right, now that we've chain pieced those, let's clip them apart. Then just like we did before, we're going to trim 1/4 of an inch on the outside of that stitch line, and then again, we'll press out. Now, like before, I like to use just a little bit of flatter, set my seams, and then press. Once we have those Flying Geese units all pieced, now we can trim those out or square those up to 2.5 by 4.5 inch units. Once those are squared up, you're ready to start piecing again. So we're now going to sew, placing 1 gold, which is your lighter blue, and 1 darker blue Flying Geese units right together. We're going to sew those together. We're going to make 4 sets of those. So you can see here that I have a little bit of painter's tape on my machine. I like to use that to help me create a nice 1/4 inch seam allowance. I know there's other products out there that I could use and put on here, but I just keep going back to the painter's tape. So for now, that's what I'm sticking with. I do take it off. I know somebody's going to ask me. I do take it off between projects just to make sure it doesn't do any damage to my machine. Now that we have those 4 units pieced together, then we're going to press, and I'm going to press up. So on these, we're going to press towards my green units, which would be the darker blue units. So now we should have 4 of these flying geese units. All right, let's make our center row. I'm actually going to take my center 4.5-inch strip, and we are going to sew one of those flying geese units to each side of that center unit. So after we've sewn it to one side, open it up and we'll sew one of those units to the opposite side. And then we'll press. We're actually going to press these towards the center now, towards that center 4.5-inch block. Now this block will finish at 12 inches, so now that you're finishing off this center section, you want to make sure that that is 12.5 inches unfinished. So there's my center unit. Let's set that aside for a few minutes. All right, moving on, let's finish those corners of the block. So as I got ready to start sewing mine together, I realized, you guys, I had made another cutting mistake. So the directions in the workbook are correct. I just somehow forgot to cut a couple of my pieces and I ran out of the correct fabric. So guess what I'm doing? I'm making this a humility block. I found a little bit of this yummy Tula Pink handmade. I love the coloring of it and I love that it has the little sewing elements in it. So instead of stopping or waiting a few days, yep, I'm being my crazy self and I'm adding in print to this quilt that's all solids. And you know what? It's going to drive people crazy and I'm going to love it because it's me. So we're going to sew our pink and green 2.5-inch squares together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I am definitely going to chain piece all 4 of these units. So once I piece those 4 units, we're going to head back over and press towards the dark. So on this one, I am going to press towards my green fabric, which would be your blue. So once we have all 4 of those units, now we're going to use those 2.5 inch by 4.5 inch strips and sew those to the side of these units. So you'll want to make sure that you're sewing it to the correct side. And again, I'm going to chain piece. And now let's press those one more time. This time we're going to press towards the pink. All right, now that we have those 4 units pieced, now we're going to complete our blocks. Finish putting those together. So we're going to next line up our blocks. We want to make sure that this inside square is down next to the yellow or the gold flying geese unit. So you'll lay them out and we'll make sure on this side it'll go just like that. So you can see that my 2.5 inch crazy squares are definitely going to move around on this block. I'm okay with it. I know it's going to bug people, but this is my humility block. And now we're back in business. Now that we've sewed those 2 on the one side, now we're going to complete those 2 sections by adding that block to the opposite side. Once you have those units, now we're going to hop back over and press. This time, because that center strip we pressed in, now we're going to press these units out. So use a little flatter, set my seams, and then we'll press out. Then we'll be ready to put the 3 rows together. All right, let's sew those 3 rows together. Now, I know as you're watching this video, the quilt police are totally going to want to come after me, but guess what? I don't believe in the quilt police, So I really don't care. As long as my block makes me happy, that's really all that should matter. So now as I'm sewing these blocks together, because of the way that I had pressed, these seams should just nest together nicely as I'm sewing. You could always go through and pin. However, you know, I'm a crazy piecer and I'm just going to make it work. Now we've got the first side attached. We've got one more side. Let's press those one more time. I'm going to press these going out. And there you have it. I love how this star quilt block turned out, even with all of its weird little quirks that happened. I hope you all found just a little bit of inspiration, and don't forget, you don't have to be perfect. Just enjoy the process. Have a great day, everybody.